All right. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar series, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share iSpring tips and tricks, and cover clients' cases. My name is Paulina. I'm the community manager at iSpring, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar, where we will be talking about how to design learning experiences for better engagement. And I have a very special presenter today. She was a speaker at the DevLearn conference that just passed. And today, please meet Cara North, everybody, Senior Learning Experience Designer at the Ohio State University. Hi, Cara. Thanks a lot for tuning in. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for letting me be here, Pauline. I'm really excited.
We are excited too, and I'm sure that our audience will love today's session. And I have great news for everybody who, for some reason, will not be able to sit through the whole session. It's being recorded, so guys, no worries. You will receive a link to a replay sometime after the webinar. However, I would like to encourage you to stay till the very end because it's a great opportunity to address your questions directly to our presenter. And to do so, please submit them in the question box, which you will find on the right side of the GoToWebinar panel.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I just want to show this here today that the resources from today's presentation can be found right here. Give me 1 second here. I'm gonna also do my closed captioning here. So if you want the resources from today's presentation, go to osu.edu/disengage, or you can scan the QR code. And bonus, I want to also show you how to do live closed captioning if that's something you're interested in. I have resources to that on the shared box. So if you have trouble with the box though, just let me know. You'll have my contact information at the end. Engagement, right? The start of a new life, the kickoff to happily ever after. Often when you say the word engagement, especially outside of an educational setting, you usually think of this, right? So why is it called learner engagement? And my challenge to you today is I want you to think about your role in this engagement. And if you think about it, when we create a learning experience, we're entering into a commitment with our audience. We're promising to guide them and take care of them when they give us the gift of their time and talent. So today, I want to explore this through a mystery. And I don't know about you all, but I am definitely not well versed in mysteries. So I enlisted a little bit of help today. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to find out why this person is disengaged. And I don't know if you've seen people like this in your organization, but I've seen that several times throughout my career of people feeling that way in front of a different e-learning or experience that we've built. So again, I want to introduce you formally to our guide today. His name is Detective Knowles, and he is basically going to be our subject matter expert today on mystery, because again, we work with subject matter experts all the time. So you can certainly appreciate maybe why I've asked him to be here today. And he's really good at solving mysteries. However, this particular one, it's going to be a little complex. So we're going to be talking about technology and learning and engagement. And he does have experience in different kinds of mystery today. So again, he is a very good subject matter expert when it comes to mysteries. So what do you say? Are you ready to help him? Hopefully you are. If you're ready to help Detective Knowles, just say yes in the chat. So that way I know that at least a couple people here today are ready to solve the mystery. So go in the chat and just type yes if you're ready to go ahead and have him go. Okay.
We have lots and lots of yeses in the chat,
Okay.
just so you know.
Perfect. Okay, great. So we will keep going. So thank you. Thanks for your help. And then his partner Scotty there is a little bit of a smart aleck, so you have to watch him. He doesn't get out of the house much, so as if you had a choice. Okay, so from this point forward, because again, it's a mystery. So there are 4 clues that are hidden throughout this particular presentation. And so what I'd like for you to do is if you see something out of the ordinary, let me know. And just let me know by putting something in the chat if you see something that looks like it could be a clue, because we're going to have 4 clues to figure out why the person is disengaged. Now, because again, this is our first time working with Detective Knowles, he's been kind enough to give us a little extra help on our first case. So this might be your most important decision of today. We have a couple of ways that we're going to do this because he's physically not here with me in Columbus, Ohio. So we're going to communicate via a different tab or browser or your phone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open like the portal to talk to Detective Knowles. We're going to use a tool called Mentimeter to talk to him. And so right now, what I want you to do is I want you to look at this particular picture and I want you to select who you want to be your sidekick. And whoever you select today, there are choices and consequences for each particular option. So Rufus has a cunning bonus. So you may want to think, what could that possibly mean? Tracy, the dog, has a speed bonus. So again, maybe you might want to think of the pros and cons with that. And Coco the monkey has a security bonus. So take a look at these 3 choices for Detective Knowles, and let me know in the chat when you're ready to make your selection. So just a couple yeses would be great. And Paulina, if you could tell me those are coming in, that would be absolutely great too.
So we do have Rufus and Tracy and Coco,
Okay.
but mostly Rufus
Okay.
from what
Well,
I've seen.
you know, it's interesting. A lot of people like Rufus. So great, you've made your decision. I actually would like you to formally tell that to Detective Knowles. So let me see. Okay, so here is our Mentimeter. So if you want to open a tab or use your mobile device, we'll see if this works live on this webinar. If you use the code 145380, you should be able to vote for your sidekick. So again, Detective Knowles is really interested in who you want to work with. So see if that works for you. Okay, we got Rufus. Okay, there we go. It's coming in. Again, this is a really important decision, so hopefully it's something you're not making lightly.
Debbie says love Rufus, but think Tracy is more rounded.
Aha! Yes, that could be too. You never know. You never know. Like I said, this is a mystery, so we need a little help for our first time. Okay. All right. I think I got several people in, so we'll go ahead and go back to the presentation. And let's learn a little bit more about who we're working with our particular person. So let me see if I can go back. All right, so we are back in it now. Let me go ahead and turn my closed captioning back on. Okay, so we've got our teammates, which is great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to explore this case and we're going to figure out kind of what's going on with this particular person. So let's learn a little bit more about the person that needs our help today. Ah, look at him. How many times have you seen that before in your L&D space or in your organization? It's really funny because took inspiration. I have a dear friend of mine who I have a podcast with. His name's Joe Suarez, who told me this story about when he first got his very first like e-learning job. He was so proud of what he built. He went out and kind of did a victory lap around the center he was at. And he actually saw somebody asleep in front of one of his modules. So kind of taken a little bit of inspiration from that story from Joe. So again, we've seen that before. We know that it happens. So my question is, why does this happen to so many people in our organization? So we're going to unpack that and hopefully figure out the case. Okay, well, I don't know what's going on here. This is really weird. I didn't plan for this. Silly technology. Things happen so weird. Oh, oops. Okay, so it wasn't a test. This is interesting development. Let's see who this person is. Oh, so this is Borson Wells, and he says he's really up on technology. Okay, um, and he also says he's really great at developing content-rich PowerPoints. I don't know if you all have ever had that experience, but I know I've certainly had the experience of working with subject matter experts like that. So let's see what you're working with here, Borson. We're really interested to see your work. Ah, man. Uh-oh, that's not good. Yeah. How many times have you seen something like this in a learning development program? I venture to say probably many of you have, and that's obviously not good. I mean, yes, that certainly is content rich. We'll give him that, but this is just not, yeah, it's not good. Yeah, that's very evident that you like talking about chili, and we're glad that you have that subject matter expertise. Um, so he says it's all about those 21st century skills. I'm just going to take a moment to get on a soapbox because I don't know if you all know this, but we've been in the 21st century for 19 years. And it's a peeve of mine when people say 21st century skills because we're currently in it. And so we really need to kind of shift our thinking, and if you think about it, think of children that are in the world today. The phone that they have that you may have in your pocket, that's going to be their antiquated technology. Yeah, that's going to be their antiquated technology. That's going to be their record player or their stereo system or whatever. What they currently have, what you currently have in your pocket is going to be that antiquated technology. So I really encourage you to maybe think about shifting your line of thinking around that, because it is really important that we realize it is the 21st century. It's already happening. We need to figure out how we can elevate all of our skills to provide a better experience for our learners. Okay, so obviously this is pretty cut and dry. This is not looking good at all, right? If that's what this person's looking at, it's probably not a good thing. So let's go a little bit and let's look into the actual research and science behind learner engagement. And I'm going to give you kind of three perspectives as we're going through for you to consider in your learning design. But before we do that, let's focus. What is learner engagement anyway? And let's just talk about it real quick, because what's really interesting about learner engagement is there's no set definition. So if you go and just type in a search engine search about learner engagement, you're going to get a bunch of different definitions, because it depends on the way that it's operationalized. So what is the context of where the learner is? Where do they sit in the organization? What is the organization? It's very contextualized. But what's really interesting is there are kind of these three constructs of learner engagement. And luckily, on his way to us, Detective Knowles found the notebook of learner engagement. So we're going to be able to go through that today together. So again, the types of learner engagement, so kind of these three constructs, you're looking at behavioral. So behavioral is, again, what are they doing, right? So what is it that they're actually doing with the content? Your cognitive is basically how are they being challenged and like how are they interacting with it? And another piece that I think is really critical that doesn't get enough love is the emotional engagement. Is their head in the game? Are they ready to learn? I think that this is a huge challenge in L&D, because especially depending on where you are, people schedule time to take learning experiences, right? So let's say you've had a bad day. Let's say that on your drive into work, somebody cut you off, or you're dealing with like stuff at your home, like with your family. It's really difficult to have an open mind and be ready to be engaged. So we're going to talk a little bit about that piece as well today. All right, so if you are into the definitions, here's a definition for you of behavioral engagement. I highly recommend this Kahoot person for a lot of stuff about engagement. Very good scholar in the actual engagement space. But essentially, again, it is that challenging piece. So what is it that somebody's doing and thinking? So how are they kind of having all of these cylinders firing in order to do that particular learning experience? And so, if you're a theory person, if you're interested in kind of the learning theory behind it, I would argue that this is very aligned to constructivism. And constructivism is leaning on kind of the different aspects of what it is that you already have in your brain. A lot of times you might hear this called like, what's in it for me? How do I see myself in the particular learning experience? And we'll be talking about that here in just a moment. But how is all this information that you're giving them something that they're able to unpack and construct to understand more about the topic and the reality of where they currently are? And I pulled this, which is pretty interesting. This was a research study about just basically engagement with lecture. So this was a classroom setting, and this was a lecture. And as you can see, going through the student engagement level was lower, obviously, when they was talking about lecture and goals. But then when it was some kind of interaction, so there was like a clicker, or there was a question, or there was a real world application, you can see the level of engagement going up. So even if you have something where you have to do lecture and a content, if as you see, if you kind of like put different aspects of engagement in there, it does help overall with kind of like that engagement process. All right, so I built out this little scale of like what this would look like kind of in the wild. So I have the engaged, the apathetic, and then the the not. So basically, if you're engaged, we know what that looks like. They're participating with enthusiasm. You know, they're doing it. Your apathetic person, they could be there, they could not. They may be distracted or disruptive, and then you are not engaged. They do not want and they refuse to be part of anything that you're putting out there. So, question for you. If you see somebody like this sitting in front of you, what are your thoughts? So, if you saw somebody like this sitting in front of you, what do you think's going on with them? So, just anything, just pop it out.
So we have some answers like tired, stressed, personal troubles, sleepy, a late night the day before, tired, don't want to be there, tired, frustrated,
Yeah.
got a headache, yeah, having a bad day.
Yeah. So, I didn't hear anything like happy, excited, any of that. So yeah, I agree with what you all said. I mean, you can just tell this person is just not in it. So my question is, in a physical space environment, you can see this, right? I mean, that's very clear. Hopefully, most of you will say yes. I can see if somebody is not engaged. So my question is, if somebody is not engaged physically, how do you see the same thing in a digital world? So I know most of you probably do stuff with e-learning. How do you see that? Now, I don't have the answer. I don't pretend to have the answer, but I want to provide with you a resource. And I have a dear friend of mine. Her name is Jo Cook, and she's in England. And she talks a lot about this concept called digital body language. And this is actually a term that I believe started in the marketing world. And it's essentially your whole digital footprint of what you're doing in the learning environment. So she's really focused on, what does that look like? How can we do that like in basically take those same metrics and apply it to a digital world? So in the shared resource folder from today, you have access to the link to her article talking more about it. So if you don't know her, you should. She's a great person. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this behavioral aspect. It could be behavioral what we're seeing, right? It could not be behavioral. I mean, just kind of depends. But let's talk a little bit more about the other perspectives. And not to alarm you, but you all did let two clues go by so far in the presentation. So keep your eyes peeled, be looking for clues. Let us know if you see a clue. Please let us know, and then that way we'll see if that is a clue for you. So again, if you see something that looks a little bit out of the ordinary in a slide, let me know because it could be a clue, and you need the clues to figure out why the person is disengaged. Okay. So cognitive engagement, again, I went to that Kahu definition, but essentially it's that effortness and the purple, I can't say it, intentionality, there you go, to how to complete the task and basically have an investment in learning. So this is essentially that kind of mental sweat that somebody is going through, like the actual like greasing the elbows of like how they get in with the content, what that looks like. And a reason I like to talk about this particular one and something I want to call out specifically is there's kind of two constructs of cognitive. So if cognitive is the umbrella and you want to kind of explore a little bit more, procedural engagement is going through the motions. And that happens a lot when you build out like an e-learning that the only engagement is hitting the next button or continue, right? You're basically going through the motions, you're clicking that button, you're going through, and you really want to make sure that what you're building is something that like stimulates the senses, right? So it's not a bad thing to be stimulated and think about things a little bit differently. And then with substantial engagement, this is more of a thoughtful manner. So, how do you interact with something in a more thoughtful way? How can you really focus on something that it is something that they can dive into and really get more information about? That kind of thing. So, I just want to give that call out because I think it's really important. All right. So again, if you're a theory person, if you're interested in it, this to me would definitely be that self-determination theory. I like to say if you're down with SDT, yeah, you know me, right? So it with the self-determination theory, there's kind of three pieces of that. There's the autonomy, so being able to make the decisions on their own, having guidance over the learning, right? The confidence piece is the mastery. What does good look like? What is your performance standard that you're wanting them to hit with this particular learning experience? And finally, the relatedness piece. So how is it related to what they already know? How can they really thrive off that prior knowledge and prior experience that they bring to the table in your learning experience? So these are great kind of things to think about as you're building out your learning experience. Now, I can't take full credit for this. Clint Clarkson, who does the L&D comics, actually said this in his Disrupt HR talk, which I do also have a link to that in the box folder because I just think it's so brilliant. But he makes this really compelling point that according to Gallup in 2015, 70% of Americans, okay, 70% reported job dissatisfaction, but most of them would rather work than take your e-learning or attend your training class. Yeah, that's not good. But if you think about it, I know myself, I've been completely guilty of that. There's been compliance training that I know I'm supposed to be taking, but I don't want to make time for it. I'd rather just keep working and then I put it off to the last minute. And then I think about it, well, wait a second, this is my bliss. This is my profession. If I feel that way about putting something off, why on earth would I think somebody else would feel differently than that? So I just want to throw that out there. Again, credit to Clint. He's kind of the one that started that, and I just think it's genius. So okay, our cognitive engagement scale, there's kind of three constructs on this. So cognitive engage, they're meeting or exceeding those course requirements, whatever it is. Apathetic, they may turn it in, they may not, just depends. And then your people that are not engaged, they don't want to have anything to do with it. Now let's flip and let's go to the emotional construct. And again, the emotional engagement piece is really focused on not only how they're feeling, but how they're involved in the process. So is it something that they're just actively participating in, or is it passive? I really like the distinction, I'm trying to remember who said it, of attended and participated. I know when I started in this career path, I used to have to give out certificates of completion or certificates of attendance, and I feel like it's so different from attending and participating. Attending to me is a butt in a seat or a face in front of a screen, but participating, I feel like you actually do something, right? There's some skin in the game. There's something really interested in there for that particular person. And I think she may be on. I thought I saw her, but my dear friend Cassie Labori, who I also have references to some of her stuff because she does a lot in the virtual classroom space. One thing that she says that always stuck with me is this all starts with us. Like we are the ones that are advocating kind of for the user. And if you really want to change the way that your learning experience is going, it starts with the person in the mirror. It's really critical that you realize that you have power and you have responsibility to your audience to try to make something that is engaging and it does link to that performance outcome that you want. So, Cassie, if you're here, kudos. All right. And then the scale of emotional engagement, we have three again. So their interest, they're bored, or they're rejecting it. So that's kind of the scale of that. And so if you want kind of like a nice little piece to wrap this up, if you're looking at like kind of these three constructs of engagement. So behavioral, again, what is it that they're doing, right? So what are they doing in it? Cognitive is how are they being challenged, or what's being asked of them, or how much autonomy do they have in this? And finally, the emotional. How does it make them feel? If it's something that's sending them to snooze town, they're not going to be really active and they're not really going to have good feelings about it, right? So those are kind of the three little wrap ups of that. All right. So just as a recap, we've went over the different constructs. So we got big news. It looks like the detective has figured out maybe why this person is disengaged. Ah, yeah, Detective Knowles. I don't think we found any, which is fine. So he's still going to tell us the answer, but before the end of the webinar, I'll go back and I'll show you where they are. So if you want to
I
see where they were, oh, go ahead.
I actually think that we did. I mean, we found
Okay.
them because I've been looking at the chat and people were sending their.
I am so sorry. For some reason on the chat, I just see like what I've put. I'm not seeing anything come in for the
You
entire.
should drop down the questions.
Oh, you know what? That's where it is. Mm-hmm. My bad. Sorry, guys. I've been looking in the chat the whole time, so that is 100% on me. So let me just real quick go back. Yes, so one person said the painting was a clue. Maria, that was you. So thank you. Let me go back. So let's go back and let's do this. So yes, this is a clue. So let's go ahead and get clue number 1. Well, 4 in this case. So it's a picture of a pointing hand. Okay, so that was the first one. Well, fourth, but yes, the first one that I saw. Someone said about a Mario Boo. Yes, I'll go back to that one real quick. Bear with me. That one definitely was a clue. This one right here. So that clue is a bullet bill. So bullet bill, we got a finger pointing and a bullet bill. Let me see. I thought I saw one more somebody said. Somebody said about the moon, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go back to the moon. And I think the moon was in this one. Yeah, I'm so sorry. That is all on me. Okay. The moon, that is a clue. So it is just the moon. So that's the clue, the moon. Okay, and I don't see anybody saying the other one. So I'm looking and I
There
don't see
was,
it.
yeah, there was the outlet on the wall and
Oh, you did get it. You did get it. Okay, yes. So the outlet was the fourth one, correct. So let me go back to the outlet here. I think the outlet was right right here. Yep. Okay. So there we go. So yes, the outlet. So you all got them all. Great. Again, that's my bad. So sorry about that. So we had the power outlet, we had the bullet bill, we had the moon, and then we had the finger pointing, right? So let me get us back to where we were. Bear with me. So with those, does anybody want to take a guess what it is? It's a
yeah.
creative outlet. No, J Rock, it's not a creative outlet. Okay. Um, okay. Unzipping a scorn package, it could be. Who knows? All right. Let's go ahead and give you all the verdict. So he's disengaged because he took too many bullets from PowerPoints. Ah, yes. So hopefully you got it with the clues there. So we had the moon for the sleep, right? We had the power for power, and then the picture of the finger pointing for the point. So PowerPoint, and then the bullet bill. So bullet, sleep, PowerPoint. So ha ha ha. Yeah. Nice thing is I can't see the eye rolls through the computer. So um, so let's talk a little bit more about how we can make more engaging activities, right? So let's talk a little bit about what that particular thing looks like. So let's talk a little bit about these different strategies. And I'm going to get a little meta here. What I'd like to do is I'd actually like to start with this particular presentation. And obviously I've made a couple of administrative mistakes with not checking the chat, and then I had the wrong thing loaded in my other screen. But let's focus just on this piece, if you don't mind. Couple things that you may have found missing is I didn't have a bunch of bullet points throughout this, right? I have that one right there. I didn't start with a ton of learning objectives. I didn't talk about myself for 5 or 10 minutes beforehand, although Paulina gave a very sweet and nice introduction, I appreciate. And I didn't have a lot of text on my slides, except that one with obviously Borson's different you know, different slide that he had. But what I did do instead is I tried to do the live closed captioning. So something was going the whole time. It's not perfect, I know, but at least it's something in case you're kind of distracted or you may have something going on. At least you might be able to catch some of it. I tried to tell you a story, so I made this like detective to kind of personify our symbiotic relationship with subject matter experts because we rely so heavily on them for their content knowledge. But as you and I both know, we need to help them a lot of times in the delivery of the content, right? I tried to do the active polling, which again, that one didn't really work that well for me today, but we're going to try one more thing here in a moment. And very poorly or maybe good, depends on your sense of humor. I did try to have like this little sense of humor going with Scotty the dog. So those are things that I did in this particular presentation. I have a question from Alana. Let's see. How did you make the closed caption? I love this question so much because this is 2019, ladies and gentlemen, and I feel like it's the right thing to do. I mean, just plain and simple, the right thing to do. I use Google Slides, Alana, and I'll show you real quick. So basically, let me stop my presenting here. In Google Slides, it is super easy um, to do live closed captioning. You ready? If you blink, you might miss it. You hit present, and then as you hit present, you have a bar here. You turn on closed captions. That's it. That's it. 2 clicks and you have live closed captions. That's it. And in the resource folder today, because again, it's kind of one of my little side missions in any presentation that I do, I want people to know it's easy to do this. It doesn't take any more time. And again, in my opinion, it's the right thing to do just to be more inclusive as a presenter. So in the folder, I do have a folder for you called, I think, live closed captioning. And I give you 2 sample presentations because you can actually do this in PowerPoint too. And I give you some resources if you want to learn how to do it in PowerPoint, which in my mind, PowerPoint takes a little bit more of audience education, or in Google Slides. So my challenge to you is think about maybe how you might want to incorporate that next time you do a presentation. Okay. So polling, again, I did not do the best I could do today, so I'm a little bit self-deprecating. But here are some tools that I encourage for polling if this is something you want to add in to different presentations. I have links to all of these in that particular folder, the resource folder that I told you about. And I also have a saying, if it's free, it's for me. So most of these have a free component to them that you can try to use. Also, another thing, these are some of my favorite tools to create images. I am not a graphic artist by any stretch of the imagination. I wish I was, but I know there's a lot of talented people out there. So these are some of the resources that I recommend for that. My favorite of the 4 of these are definitely Adobe Spark. I really like it because it's, again, free, and it's got a lot of great different stock images and that kind of stuff that you can use. Again, links to all of these are in that resource folder. Couple other ones that I want to kind of denote. If you use stock photos, Unsplash is one of my favorites. But then again, it's 2019. Another little sidebar conversation. Make sure that your pictures and your art is inclusive of today's world, please. There's a lot of people that are looking for representation out there, and again, in my opinion, it's the right thing to do to make sure that your population of your pictures and images does match kind of the population that you're serving. So if you're looking for people of color, I highly recommend nappy.co, and then there's a Women of Color in Tech that I also have a link to in the box folder. And again, those are free. I do think you have to cite them, but that's really easy to do in a lot of different capacities. All right. So let's say you're going to start thinking about how to maybe retrofit. I have this rubric here that was, I think, by Silver, Strong, and Robinson, and I really like it because I think it's really good questions to ask. This is something that you might want to think about, just incorporating kind of in your different ways of doing things. So ask yourself, what does success look like in what you're building? So how are they going to master what's going on? How do you have curiosity built in? So how are people going to look for that understanding? Originality, so how can they be part of self-expression? And then in relationships, how do other people need to be involved in this, if at all? Okay. And then finally, I want to wrap up with this idea of structural versus environmental when it comes to learner engagement. So if you think about it, there's kind of these elements of motivation and engagement that are present in our world, whether it's through cognition, even intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and even through stories and games. And I really think that you can elevate these to really build engaging experiences. Now, the structural elements, this may actually involve like altering course materials, your structure, or even your pedagogy practice in some way. And a lot of times it can take a little bit more time to plan and implement. But with your environmental elements, this can be actually the physical environment, or it can be like a layer of dynamics to basically help the content and learning process be more engaging. So I'm going to go through, there's 8 of these. The first one in the structural elements is challenge. So with a challenge, think about what needs to be completed to progress and go to the next part. Now, this could empower them to personally like do meaningful tasks, but it should be adjusted to kind of that optimum level of difficulty, and that's so difficult to get right. It's really hard to find that Goldilocks standard, I know. But one thing that can kind of help with that is this zone of proximal development. Now, this is definitely like out of the pedagogy handbook, if you will, but I do think there's some value for us as IDs to kind of understand this. So essentially, the zone of proximal development is the distance between the actual development level as determined and the level of potential development through the solving. So basically, where they currently are versus kind of where you want them to get. So that's something to consider in your next learning. Another one is your purpose. So again, have something for them to strive for. And through this purpose, why do they matter? And how are they involved in the story or narrative that you're telling? Clearly state those rules and goals and really kind of help how tell the story, how the big picture is going to help determine the purpose. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You want to make sure that again what you're building is mapped directly to those performance outcomes. So the activities you're having them do, does it fill a performance outcome that you've identified? That's really tricky to do a lot of times, but again, I think it's really critical. A story. So think of how you can make analogies or really kind of build real world scenarios or different things like that that can really help evoke mental images for them, because a lot of times stories have this authentic piece to it that we as humans really like. Mystery. So, how do you kind of drive curiosity to really create this kind of cognitive disequilibrium? So, basically, what I mean by this is how does it pique the curiosity? How do you keep looking? How do you really kind of get them engaged? Some others, so this is more of an environmental one. So this starts the environmental elements. Autonomy. So do they have a choice? You can't say, well, I'm going to say it now, but I got in trouble earlier in the year for having a presentation about choose your own adventure. Yeah, choose your own adventure. So now I call it determine thy own exploit. So if you say choose your own adventure, just know that they're pretty litigious. So just FYI, in case you were wondering. Determine their own exploit. So again, what path, what autonomy do they have in the learning experience? Again, mastery. How do you know it's good enough? And how do you go beyond kind of that one and done learning experience? How are they going to get targeted feedback? How are they going to grow? One thing that I've started doing a lot in my particular courses that I support here is if they miss a question in a knowledge check, after they miss it the second time, the feedback actually gives them a link back to where the content was covered. Because obviously they're not getting it, and you don't want somebody to just guess if the answer is correct or not. So even just doing that so they can refresh themselves, go back and take a look, I think is really important. With altruism, this is the sense of belonging and purpose. So again, going back to that emotional piece I was talking about, how do they see themselves in the organization, and how do they see themselves as part of the success of the organization? How can they work together and really give back and learn more in a different way? And finally, I would say recognition. And so, my cautionary tell with this is make sure that recognition is something that's appropriate for your audience. Not everybody likes to be recognized in the same ways. Earlier, I gave a shout out to Cassie and Joe, and then my friend Jonathan Rock. I know they like hearing their names, and I know that because I know them. So I don't have a problem using their names, but I know some people that would terrify them to have their name said up on a webinar. So just really kind of get to know your audience, I think is really important. But then again, being able to match it back to those key performance indicators. What is the performance that you're trying to achieve in this particular learning experience, and how can that really work? All right. So went through a lot of that pretty quickly, but I want to get back to your key choice that you made today. And so if you remember, I had a cunning, a speed, and a security bonus. So what I'm going to do now is have you go here. Let's skip over some stuff. So I'm going to start with Rufus. So if you selected Rufus, you had a cunning bonus. So I always like to kind of do like a little wrap up activity with my webinar. So if you're on Team Rufus, you have a boss that says your L&D strategy is great, and you know it's not. You know that it's not hitting those key performance indicators. You know that people are bored. You know that there's a lot of issues going on. What are some things that you can do? So, are there any things that you've been able to take away from this particular presentation that maybe you might want to incorporate in your learning strategy? So, this is kind of where I want to hear from you. So, again, if you were Team Rufus, the reason you have the cunning bonus is because you're talking to your boss, right? I think we've all been there, maybe. What can you do to really kind of elevate that standard of what learning looks like at your organization? So, one team member said, keep pushing, better trusted ways to learn. Absolutely. Oh, live captions, so somebody liked it. Thank you. I appreciate that. What else? All right, let's see what that says. Minimize ideas per slide. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Create your change. It starts with the person in the mirror, as Cassie always says, and I love that. Yeah, if you have enthusiasm and have a good attitude, I think it's going to really shine. Hopefully, yeah, have upper management experience, a real life example. Absolutely. A lot of times it's really difficult because sometimes they're just so far removed. It's really hard for them to think about. So yeah, I think I love that one. And then improvise the methods. Yeah, ask others for feedback, reevaluate, and provide metrics. Yeah, they love numbers, don't they? Yeah, brief examples kind of showing before and after. I love that. And then the secondary feedback with resources. Yeah, great. Okay, so good job, Team Rufus. That's some good stuff. And I will download these as PDFs so that way you don't have to take notes with these takeaways, and add them to the box for today so that way you can have them and maybe share with others. All right, Team Tracy, if you remember, you all had a speed bonus, so you don't have as much time. So, quick, you've decided to try a new tool or technique in your next learning experience. What is it? So, quick, rapid fire here. What are some things that you want to do? Slide model. Okay, great. What else? A skit. Uh-huh. We got live closed captioning. Branch track. Yeah, I like branch track. A lot of people don't know much about it, but it's a pretty cool tool. Captions and hidden clues. Yeah, great. Okay. All right, leave that open for just another moment. Oh, Menti. Yes, but just a warning, you need to know how to administer the Mentimeter. And again, that's all on me. But yeah, okay, great. All right, and finally, if you remember, our friend Coco the monkey had a security bonus. Oh, I got one more here. Inclusivity. Yes, I agree. Okay, so Coco the monkey, you work somewhere that does not allow web surfing and has a secure firewall. How can you make learning more engaging? I've heard this so many times from other people that this is really difficult for them. So I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on this as we're wrapping up. Okay, that's a great one. Real life scenario. So going back to kind of that what's in it for me factor, I think that is great. Case studies, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great with that. All right, what else do we have? Hidden Easter eggs? Yeah, I mean, you could certainly hide different stuff in things. Dialogue simulations, great. Role-playing activities at live sessions, great. Yeah, so you all are hitting the nail on the head. That is wonderful. All right, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Interaction, great. I want to go back because I want to make sure that there's time for questions. So let me go back here. Let me go back. And then again, remember that all the resources today are in the box, which I will share one more time. And if you want to connect with me, there's how to connect. I think life is too short to have a boring headshot, so I gift myself. And yes, I'm Team Gift, not Team GIF. But again, go to osu.edu/disengage for all the resources today. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Paulina to help with Q&A.
Wow, thank you so much, Kara. I think it was a fabulous presentation and something that our today's audience definitely enjoyed, as far as I can see from the comments that were shared in the question section. Okay, and yes, we do have a couple of minutes to cover the questions that our audience had. And let's start with the very first one from Sandy. Is it possible to correct any closed captioning in recordings?
Ooh, great question. In this particular one, no. With Google Slides, it does not give you an SRT file, which you would need to go kind of on the back end to make those changes. However, with PowerPoint, you do get an SRT file. So again, not to take up too much time talking about that, but with PowerPoint, it does take more of an audience education because the captions, they can be changed by language on the user's device, but it does take some education of an audience. And I tried to do it one time and I ended up, and maybe it was just me like not explaining it well, but it was very confusing for people. So for me, for this, I usually do it this way. And then with the captions, if I'm doing a webinar, I just record the whole thing and then have people like comment about the things that it screwed up. But I certainly can appreciate the need for accuracy in this, but unfortunately with Google Slides, they're not there yet.
Thank you so much, Kara. And just a moment. Michaela is asking, what's your favorite for polls?
My favorite for polls, I
Hmm.
will have to say before DevLearn, it was Poll Everywhere. And the reason I like Poll Everywhere because it embeds into Google Slides. But the reason that I switched to Mentimeter is when I presented at DevLearn, I found out how many people had expressed interest in coming to my session. It was definitely more than my account allowed for by quite a bit. So with Mentimeter, you have a higher number of audience participants, at least on the lower level accounts. So that's the reason that I switched. Now, the one thing I don't like about Mentimeter, as you saw, is they don't embed in to at least Google Slides. So that's kind of a pain, like navigating between tabs, and that's been a learning curve for me as well. But if you have like a small audience, I'd say like 40 or less, I definitely recommend Poll Everywhere.
Thanks a lot. And Melissa is asking, does it work to do polling in an e-learning lesson?
Ooh, great question. I think that it does actually work in that. I haven't messed with it a lot, but the nice thing is, I think as long as it is, you know what? I don't know. I think if it was synchronous, it would. But if since it's asynchronous, I don't know if it would like stay there or not. Hmm. I don't know. I might have to get back with you on that because I don't want to give you any wrong information. But I think it might be tricky because obviously the nature of a lot of e-learning is um, asynchronous, so that might be a little bit tricky.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Jonathan is asking, is there a good resource for someone who wants to learn more about constructivism and SDT?
Yes, I shared it in this box folder. There's two research articles that are really great about explaining more about these particular theories. But if you want specifics, like like easy to read resources, please reach out to me. Just send me an email or send me a tweet or send me something on LinkedIn, and I'll find those for you and send them to you. Happy to help.
All right. Thanks a lot. And um, another question, does learner engagement always achieve the business objectives? How do you track this?
Oh, yes, yes. That's always the $1 million question, isn't it? I'm going to give you the crummy answer. It totally depends. So if you're basically whatever you've decided your KPIs are or learning objectives or whatever your organization calls them, if you have activities mapped to each one of those that you feel are more engaging than just giving them content on a page, then I think that you could maybe make that case, maybe have like an alpha and a beta. So version one is like the old way, and then version two is the new way, and then maybe see how in a couple months or whatever your duration is, how people are still remembering. Another resource I highly recommend is Will Tallheimer has a book called Performance Based Smile Sheets, and that book literally has just changed my mind on the way that we ask evaluation questions and even evaluate learning. So I highly recommend that if you haven't checked that out, because the way that he asks questions about it, especially like with a Likert scale, instead of people rating like 1 to 5, do you like this training? He really focuses on shifting it to behavioral anchored. So essentially, a 1 being I have no clue how to perform this in my job and I need more help, versus a 5, I could basically teach this to my peer. And I think that's a really powerful way of looking at it. So you might have more luck and resources looking at that. But I think it depends on how the KPIs and learning objectives are defined as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thanks a lot for covering that one as well. So let's take care of two more questions, and I think after that we will need to wrap up. So first of all, is gamification finally dead? What do you think, Karen?
Well, I don't think it is dead. I don't think it's a buzz. I think it's something that is inherently kind of going to be around for a while, and I really like it because again, I am actually like a gamer in real life and I play video games a lot. So taking kind of elements of games I think is really interesting, but I do know that there are certain maybe populations or audiences that might not like it. So again, know your people. That's step number one. Like know your people, know what they want. But also just try to experiment. I don't know if it's dead. I think that's a really interesting question. But maybe the buzz is dead, and maybe it's not just a buzzword, but maybe it's like an actual concept now. I don't know.
Like it was with like mobile training, sort of, and
Yeah,
like
like M learning. Remember when that was
yeah.
hot? Like, oh, M learning. Ooh,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, something interesting.
yeah.
Okay, and Sandy, question from Sandy. Do you deal with specific subjects or do you cover a variety of areas? Anything unique to certain subject matters that make engagement more difficult, such as training on regulations, for example?
Ooh, okay. So my weird nebulous path in L&D. I spent about 5 years at Amazon, and I did a lot of customer service training in that regards. And then I've been in higher ed for 7 years now, and so in higher ed, it's a completely different animal. I'm supporting like academic courses. So yeah, that basically, I think with customer service specifically and more corporate, I feel like they want the information, they want it now, and they want to get out and get on with their day. So being able to maybe tell a compelling story, take them on this adventure in your learning experience, but then giving them an actual physical resource out of it. So whether that's in another system like a knowledge center or SharePoint or whatever the knowledge management organization and hierarchy is in the organization, I think that's really critical to really have that performance support piece in it. But the stuff I do in higher ed, I get to be like really crazy with some of the stuff I do, which is fun. It's so fun. But students expect something a little bit different. So I think it just kind of depends on your audience. But I'm happy to talk more about that. It's a great question. And feel free to email me or hit me up on social media.
And at this point, we are wrapping up. Thanks a lot, Kara, and thanks to you guys. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.